Hey you nerds, how the heck are ya? And welcome back to the nerdiest channel on YouTube, the 1138 Nerd Herd. The channel where we talk about, review, debate, and discuss comic books, superhero cinema, and pop culture in general. Once again, I am your gracious host, Cascio Pistachio, and in this spine-tingling episode, we begin a review series on a brand spanking new comic book entitled Ignited. Ignited is a new comic book graphic novel series from a brand new imprint called Humanoid 1 or Humanoids. Ignited #1 is co-written by famous comic scribe Mark Waid. Backing him up is Kwanzaa Osayefo with pretty okay artwork from Phil Briones. Colors by Andrew Crossley and a mild assist by Leonardo Piccarotti. So what is Ignited? What is it about? Well, for all intents and purposes, it's a superhero series with sort of a de-emphasis on the superhero part. Well, one of the first things I noticed was how similar the setup was to a once beloved, now sadly maligned TV show called Heroes. They sort of had this opening crawl in the pilot episode, letting you know that various people around the world were suddenly, I guess, ignited. Sort of like in this series, they discovered they had powers and abilities, and the setup for Heroes back then was that now that these people, or at the point when these people all came together or realized they had powers and things like that, they would begin to carry out actions and decisions that would ultimately affect the world in a way that would either destroy it or save it. Humanoids does sort of the same thing, as you can see on the opening page here. They set you up to know that various people have been ignited or empowered, and that obviously, of course, whoever these people are and whatever powers they have will have, some pretty dire, if not important, consequences for this world of story. So, without giving too much away, the premise of Ignited is a school in Arizona called the Phoenix Academy in Arizona suffered a mass shooting attack 1 year ago. And during this attack, 6 random strangers are triggered, or more appropriately, ignited, each one gaining superpowers of some kind. When classes resume, the principal supports a campaign from the school board to arm the teachers to protect against something like that happening again. Just as in our world, there are those who support this idea and those that don't. One such person is Anouk Lovari, our point of entry character, and it is she who leads us through our introduction to the rest of the cast. On the morning of the first day back, Anouk is doing her best to convince herself that resuming the once everyday routine is normal. Before boarding a public transit bus, she hesitates, having a flashback of the day of the shooting. What's interesting to note is that in the frame presented, it's colored all in red. The obvious soft pedal and thematic approach to informing the reader that this is a pretty blood-soaked scene. In it are blurred-out, panic-stricken students caught in a barrage of gunfire. Bullets, blood, and sinew flying about in every direction, and one bullet in particular coming directly at the reader, or more importantly, Anouk. It could just be a random, meaningless, yet very dramatic panel, or it could be the point of view of another character, but I'd be willing to bet this is the last image Anouk sees before she was struck by one of the shooter's bullets. At school, various news crews are covering the auspicious event, giving commentary and interviewing random students. It is said that there were 14 casualties and 38 wounded, and of the survivors, several have gone missing. Subtle foreshadowing? Let's hope so. One of the newscasters also mentions that authorities are investigating a boy named Shai Hadain in connection with the shooting. Keep that name in mind, as he's also one of our main characters. But what's interesting to note is on page 7, I think it is, in the corner leftmost and largest panel is a student, dead center, with characters in the foreground and background interacting with those around them, but this dude in the center doesn't just seem like a randomly placed figure. He seems almost deliberately isolated and alone, a common theme for people who sometimes end up carrying out mass shootings. Hopefully, this will end up meaning something, or I could be grasping at straws. Another cool thing I noticed is how the writer team gives us these mini teaser sort of intros to our remaining cast members. Like on page 8, one of the kids who comments for the camera is the green-haired kid sharing the cover with his classmates. And then on page 9, we get a less brief but still short intro to Marisol, a Hispanic girl who's also featured on the cover. She's getting into it with a few dudes in the hallway. In the wake of the shooting, the school implements issuing see-through backpacks as a means to deter students from bringing concealed weapons onto campus. Marisol apparently chose not to switch out, and these three dudes are giving her a hard time over it. She wins and storms off as Anouk arrives, greeting the guys hassling Marisol as Ty, or one of the guys hassling Marisol as Ty. We get a little sense of Anouk's personality when he responds to her as get along, as in why can't we all just. There are some nice artistic and emotional touches that come in panels of teachers and students in classrooms and hallways with memorials of wreaths, cards, and flowers in the seats or on the lockers of slain or missing students. So then around page 9, it happens. Every single student's cell phone is hacked at once in an anonymous or V for Vendetta style override. This is Viral and Wave, two of our Ignited, speaking out against the school board arming the teachers. Wave makes some very important points, asking how bringing more guns into it makes anyone safer, and pointing out how certain teachers who harbor certain prejudices would not be suitable to be given a firearm, or those of a certain ethnicity would be automatically mistaken or selected by law enforcement as being the shooter. At the end, Viral and Wave demand the teachers threaten to strike if this mandate is forced on them, and if they don't, they will be in for a bad case of the runs. And so when you read that, it has you thinking, okay, these are two of our Ignited, of course, so it's possible one of them has the ability to affect a person's bodily functions. Either that or they have access to the faculty lounge wherein they can sneak in and spike the teachers' thermoses and lunch bags. But we'll find out. After that, we're introduced to Principal Romero, who quickly hops on the PA system trying to convince the student body that it was the school's own emergency broadcast system that was just hacked and violated to deliver that message. His assistant, Hartfield, asks him if they even have such a system that activates cell phones. But Viral and Wave are true to their word, and the next day all of Nook's classes are taught by substitute teachers. This makes the Ignited overnight sensations in the students' eyes. Then we get to our introduction to our next Ignited cast member, Himari, the blue and purple-haired girl sharing the cover with the others. There's some cool foreshadowing here as the scene opens in Anouk's art class. In front of Himari on her desk is an origami bird sculpture. After class, Himari approaches Anouk. It's surprising to her, as in backstory, she and Himari weren't friends, or so the dialogue would suggest. Himari asks why she's so obsessed with Wave and Viral. And then what I found to be a very strong plot element was Anouk has another one-panel flashback of hiding in a corner or alcove during the shooting. And I love how that suggests what she's going through. Walking around, acting all normal when in the middle of her mind is the memories of such an awful experience. Himari raises Anouk's suspicions by pressing her about her interest in Wave and Viral. Clearly a noob at undercover investigation, Anouk asks what she knows. I guess she knew she was busted because Himari just bolts around the corner as Anouk suggests Himari knows something. Anouk gives chase, but Himari is just flat out gone, which is, or would usually be impossible under normal circumstances, but Anouk continues down the hall, running to catch up to Himari. As you can see, the wall in the hallway has authorized graffiti on the wall in the form of the word "fearless" painted on it, in large, life-size letters. Behind Anouk, Himari appears and looks to be melded with or into the wall, evidence of her ignited ability. Some kind of chameleonic camouflage power? I'm sure answers are forthcoming, but I thought that was very cool. Next is another shooter flashback, the intensity of which wakes our next cast member, Luther, from sound sleep, and his father, who is unnamed at the moment, along with several of his militarily dressed friends or partners. They look to live in a pretty large house or mansion, so I don't know if Luther's father is a part of some civilian neighborhood watch, or if they're actual active or former military men. I'm sure answers will be forthcoming, but they plan to protect the Phoenix Academy students since the administration backed out. Luther doesn't seem too pleased with this, and as his mother enters, who's also unnamed, he's hopeful she will get his father and his friends not to go through with it, to no avail, since she's wearing a nondescript police uniform and a badge on her chest. And she's basically deputized Luther's father and his friends. Later on at school, Anouk shows detective or investigative reporter type traits as she continues trying to piece together the identities of Wave and Viral. This, to me, suggests she may become either the leader of this group, if it turns out to be mainly a team book, or will play a large part in her ensuing, if not imminent, superhero persona. Closing out this issue, Anouk gets shoved aside as a random student makes way for the fleeing Viral. Who's he fleeing from? You guessed it, Luther's parents' mini-militia. And what's clever and insightful here is that it seems Luther's parents gave no thought as to how the sight of armed men in military camouflage strolling onto the campus would affect the recently traumatized student body. So of course, upon seeing this, what do? You guessed it again, they panic. They run like hell, scattering in all different directions. But, true to their word, the Ignited Ones strike at the unarmed interlopers with a barrage of what for now can only be described as sonic waves, which incapacitates the deputy militia as well as the student body. All the students except, seemingly, Anouk, who has followed Viral to the roof, complete with her original flashback of the bullet flying directly at her from earlier this issue. She reaches the roof, where she finds Viral with his helmet off, using his phone to broadcast his message to the deputy militia. He stops as she bursts through the door, only to be caught by the arm from behind by Wave. And that's where Ignited issue number 1 hangs off a cliff. So my thoughts on this issue is it's very well written, has great pacing, and even confirms for me how I plan to execute my own intellectual property, Power Progeny, later this year. We have a nice balanced cast with an equal number of males and females, something I think is highly important in this age of inclusion and diversity. The artwork by Phil Briones reminds me a little of Pat Olive, with nuances of John Byrne, and while I find his anatomy to be somewhat flat or two-dimensional like Byrne's, it's serviceable. I know some fans may not share my opinion, but that's not really expected. The coloring by Andrew Crossley and Leonardo Piccarotti is as good as any coloring out there today. And of course, Kwanzaa Osayefo's narrative, behind the ably assisted and incomparable Mark Waid, really pulls you into this world of story and its characters. I mean, what can you really say or not say about Mark Waid? You know, on the professional and genre side of things. Ignited is reminiscent not only of Heroes, but also of its most likely inspiration, Marvel's Uncanny X-Men, and of course taps into the teenage years most group titles and writers so often are attracted to. I want to go on, but I pretty much covered as much as I could without giving away more than I already have for anyone who hasn't read Ignited number 1 yet. So with that, I'll say if you enjoyed this video and our review of Ignited number 1, please leave a like or a comment below. And if you're really feeling my vibe, go ahead and click on the subscribe button below, and you will be one of the first to receive notification when my review of Ignited number 2 is posted. Thanks for clicking in, and I hope to see you all back here for issue 2. So until then, be safe, take care, and have a good read.